Senator from Spartanburg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will try not to take even 5 minutes. Good afternoon, everybody. Wanted to briefly talk to you about something I would normally discuss if and when I introduce legislation, but given it's the second year of the two-year session, I'm just going to work with people between now and next year and find out how to address an issue that came up in numerous conversations I had last week over at the Capital City Club with the Economic Development Association, and that is something called Economic, Social, and Governance, or ESG Scores. This is something that many of us are just starting to learn about. I'm recently become familiar with the concept, and apparently 82% of American companies are now adopting some form of ESG score to determine creditworthiness, access to capital, and even how people may be promoted or employed in businesses and banks across the United States. Essentially, this is going to be a new way in which we determine whether someone's creditworthy or employment worthy beyond a credit score or a criminal background check. And essentially, it's going to have a rating, and many of the companies that do it now will weigh your score based on where you stand on certain environmental issues. For example, if you support or have given any kind of investment capital to ExxonMobil, you get a deduction for that. If you've given money to or invested in a company that does solar panels or green energy, you get a credit for that. If you support certain positions that are considered to be favorable to certain law enforcement agencies, you get a deduction for that. If you oppose certain law enforcement agencies and certain practices they adopt, you get a credit. In other words, you're being rated on your ideological belief, not on your ability to pay back a loan or do a job. And I feel that this is extremely dangerous precedent to set. Many states in the United States are taking action against the implementation of ESG scores as a condition for employment or access to credit. Kansas recently passed legislation to this effect. I think about Jefferson's quote when he said, "I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against any form of tyranny over the mind of man." I truly believe that an ESG score becomes a form of tyranny over people's beliefs, over their deeply held religious convictions, over their beliefs even on oil and gas exploration. And I do not believe in this state we want to go down the road of making it a precondition of economic development that you have the right kind of ESG score versus a good credit score or a good business plan. Currently, the only country, one of the first countries in the world to implement an ESG score, they didn't call it that, but the same concept, was China under the Chinese Communist Party, and I certainly don't believe we want to be following that precedent. So I'd love to discuss this with members during the off season, and we can hopefully address this in the new session next year. Thank you, Mr. President.